This is a black walnut tree, a volunteer wild black walnut. I found it last year, struggling. I pushed over a hawthorn because we had another one that came up that I'm training up here. So I found this. I want to graft some Ohio black walnut on it. Now this variety of Ohio black walnut has a thinner shell. They're nice big nuts, but they got a thinner shell. They're easy to crack. So that's what I want to put on this. Now a couple things about what I'm going to show you today is a cleft graft. As I told you before, there's three basic types of grafts. There's a bark graft, a whip graft, and a cleft graft. If you look at our previous videos where I did an apple, that was a bark graft, where you're cutting the side of the bark, you're slipping the scion behind it. A cleft graft, we're actually going to cut down the center of this and slip the scion between the wood. Your three basic grafts, it all depends on the age and the size of your wood. A whip graft would be about the size of my finger. It can be bigger as long as your scion's about the same diameter. You're actually going to splice two pieces together. That's a whip graft. The bark graft's that's on your smallest limbs. Your limbs that are getting this here, it's going to be hard to find scion this size. It's going to be hard to do a whip graft, and it's not going to have the same strength. So this, we're going to do a cleft graft. Now, if your wood's getting 2+ inches, 2 or more, it's going to be hard to split that wood. So that's when you start doing a bark graft. So today, this is a perfect size for a cleft graft. We're going to do it up kind of high here. Just keep it out of the weeds. And as this grows up, we want to keep it. We want to get the growth up here so it's out of the browsing height for deer. We have a lot of deer here. Deer like to browse. You'll notice if you've got a wooded area, you got trees, you got shrubs, you're going to notice right about here is where all your stuff gets nipped off. They don't like to do a lot of work. They're walking along, they'll reach up and they'll bite a piece out. That's their browsing height. They don't want to reach up when there's plentiful food like this time of year. This is June 14th. They're not going to work hard. They're not going to reach up. So we're going to go up and make it a little difficult here. I might put a fence around this. If it had better wood up here, I'd probably do it up here. But we got a couple cuts that's been made. So I'm going to do it right about here. Thing to remember about black walnut. Black walnut is a bleeder. I made this cut yesterday. You can see that sap bleeding profusely. If you graft a black walnut while it's bleeding, it will not take. So typically what you got to do is you got to cut these 5 to 10 days before you do your grafts. You can see where I cut these yesterday. It's really bleeding. The top, not so much. So what we're going to do, the way to stop this, you'll notice it's not bleeding up here where I cut it yesterday. It's bleeding on these down here. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take our pruning saw and we're going to make a couple cuts at the bottom. That's going to cause it to bleed. What it's doing is it's a wound there that has to do with root pressure, and it's pushing that sap up. It's bleeding there. We're going to relieve that pressure below the graft so that doesn't bleed up here. So what we do, and this is not hurting the tree. If you want your black walnut graft to take, if you do a black walnut earlier in the year, before they come out, you're going to see a lot of bleeding. It's better to wait till they're growing. But we're going to take this, we're going to make a couple cuts. Just like that. Okay, I'm going to do another one over here. You want to go fairly deep. Those will heal over this year. You'll never see those. And now what I've done, your sap's going to come out down here. It's not going to make it up here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to make a fresh cut. Now, with those cuts down there, this is going to stay dry up here. This will stay dry. Now, for a cleft graft, there's a tool. You can do bigger diameter wood with a cleft graft. There's a tool, kind of a long, looks like a wedge bar. You can tap that down in there. But there again, I prefer if it's getting that big where you got to use a large tool to do a cleft graft, you might as well do a bark graft. So you can see it's not bleeding. We're going to take our grafting knife. Black walnut's real easy to split. Just carefully go down. Just like that. We're going to wedge our scion on either side, and that's all you need right there. About an inch, inch and a half. We'll pull that back out. This is your scion right here, or your scion. This is your cambium layer. Your cambium layer is your growth layer. This is your xylem cells. This is where the water is pushed up into the tree from the roots. This is your phloem cells. This is the food coming down from the leaves. Okay, your bark, and then your cambium, this little fine layer where your bark slips. If you look in here, that little tan line there, that's your cambium layer. That's what you need to match up on your scion to your stock. That's what's going to heal together. That's what a graft union is formed. If you don't line those up, it's not going to take. This wood doesn't matter. This little fine cambium layer is what matters. Got some nice scion here from this Ohio black walnut. What you want to look for, the black walnut has two buds. It's got a primary bud and a secondary bud. These are their best ones. So and we're going to do about 2, maybe 3 of these. So if there's 2 buds here, 2 here, and 2 here, that's 6 chances for a bud to emerge. So this is a nice piece. I'm going to cut off the dead end. You see it's nice and green in there. This has been in the refrigerator. We're just going to take a nice and easy. You're going to turn this into a wedge. Nice long stroke. Nice consistent move from your elbow. Taking this down to a point. Like that. You want a nice, consistent, because you want this to be flat. This needs to be flat for that to take. You don't want it curved or bowed. A little bit more on this side. This way it's important. It's important to have a nice, sharp grafting knife. I just sharpened this. Just touched up the edge before we come out here. There we go. Getting down. You notice it's nice and flat. Notice since we did this, the wood is just damp like it should be, but there's no bleeding. We're going to pry this open just a little bit with our knife. That's what these grafting knives here, that's what this is called, that's for your working buds, but it works good. Just put it in here. Whoops. We're going to pry it open. We're going to stick that bud down in there. And what you want, there's that cambium layer I told you about. Now, you want to get this lined up. It doesn't have to match all the way. As long as it matches here, here, anywhere down there. As long as those two cambium layers cross and make contact with each other, that's where the healing process starts. So you don't want it in all the way. You want it to stick out just a little bit. When I rub my finger across there, you can feel that it's just kind of sticking right out just a little bit. If that's in flush with this, you're in too far. Now you see the green? Now I can see the cambium. That's out a little too much. Just press it in with your fingers. There. So now we got that one in there. Okay, so we got a bud here, we got a bud here. We only need about 2 buds. You don't want all this trying to grow at the same time. There, we got 1 good bud, 2 good buds right there. and there's a primary and secondary, so that's 4 chances on this one. And that leaves us a nice piece to finish off here. I don't like leaving dead wood up here like that because that's a place where infection could come in. You want that to heal over as quickly as possible. So I always trim that top off if I got extra on there. There, just like that. Now this is perfect for our second one. We're going to do the same thing on this side. This side you already got your wedge. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to come down. Make sure it's the same on both sides. There we go. Nice wedge. Nice and flat. Stick this one on this side. Now take some of this poly tape. This part's just like doing the bark graft in our previous video. We want that nice and tight. We want it very tight. We want pressure on these so those cambium layers make contact, and we don't want these drying out. We don't want moisture getting in. We don't want moisture getting out. Just like surgery, you know, if you went to the hospital to have surgery, they open you up, they seal you back up so infection doesn't get in. So we wrap this nice and tight, especially up here. And again, I take my time on these. I'm not in an orchard where I'm doing hundreds of these. If I did, I wouldn't be as meticulous as I'm being. But on these, take a little bit of time here. You'll see I go back down. It's easier. Don't try to put poly tape on off the roll. You'll have this stuff everywhere. Just measure out a length. You'll get used to what diameter you're doing. If you got a little extra, you got too much, just tear it off. But here you see, I don't mind going around 3 times. You come up under it. Pull that and just kind of tighten it and just see what I'm doing with my fingers there. You want that tight. Watch what happens now. I'll just keep pulling. Bam, that'll snap off and it'll bind on itself. Okay, now we're going to put our wax on. Toilet bowl wax. A lot cheaper than what they call grafting sealer, which is nothing more than black tar. What I found with this, you can rub it off so that wood dries out later. You put black tar in these tips, especially when it's hot like this, it's going to bake those top buds. I've had a lot more success using this toilet wax. Standard wax ring for installing a toilet. It only costs a couple bucks at any big box store. Much cheaper, and I think it does a better job. And it's much more pliable. You're not getting it all over you. So, and now on a nice warm day like this, it's very pliable. It'd be more pliable. I just took it out. I had it in a cool area. Now, just like if you saw our other video, we're going to fill in this entire top of this wedge here. We don't want anything drying out. We don't want anything getting in. Don't be afraid to put a lot of this on there. You see what I'm doing? I'm going around this. Now we do have a little bud in there, but don't worry if you get some on that bud. It'll break right through that wax. The important thing is you seal it off from the elements. You don't want that drying out in there, and you don't want rain and stuff, bacteria getting in there. So now typically, and then we put a little right on top, just like that. It keeps these from drying out, and it doesn't get hot like like your grafting sealer, your tar grafting sealer would. That stays on there, believe it or not. It doesn't melt and drip off. This toilet wing wax, we've already had, I think it was 99 degrees the other day in June. And this stuff does, you saw from the grafts in our previous video, the apple grafts, it's still on there. It doesn't go anywhere. But as the tree grows, as these buds grow, the scion grows, it'll expand, and eventually it won't come off. It'll just stay there and it'll expand over the years and, you know, eventually wear off. But now, a little bit on the sides here. There we go. Now, typically, sometimes if I'm doing a cleft graft or a whip graft, I won't use the wax tape. But in this case, it's big enough, I always take that extra step. Now we're going to top it off with a little bit of wax tape, just to make sure she's sealed good. This is your wax tape, very pliable. This you can leave on the roll. Same thing. This is easier to stay on the roll. It doesn't fall everywhere like poly. Keep it tight, a little bit of stretch as you wind it up. This, just in my opinion, the reason I do this, just that little guarantee that it is sealed off. No air or moisture is getting in or out. Go around the top one time, just let it overlap a little bit. If you pull on it and stretch it as you go around there, you'll see it'll just kind of fold over there and then come down. And then you just kind of hold that and pull, and it snaps off and it binds. Done. Now, what we'll do, and I am going to put a fence around this. Deer come right through here. Later today, I'm going to put a little fence around it just to be sure, because the deer will chew these off. And there's nothing more aggravating than having a graft, especially a graft that has started growing and you come out to check it one day and it's been chewed off. So if you've got deer around your area, you know, don't procrastinate. I've done that. I'll get it tomorrow. Next day, I'll get it the next day. The next day you come out to do it and it's been chewed off. All right, see? I just, like before, you just kind of, you mash that little edge down and you just fold that wax right over top. Now you've got a airtight, watertight seal. We'll come back in 5 to 10 days and we'll see what she looks like. Oh, real quick, see this? Remember I told you it wasn't bleeding up here? There's where your sap's going. That's what you got to do on a black walnut. If you don't do this, and I've done this when I first started doing these, it will not take. If this bleeding like this where your graft is, they will not take. They will die. So you can see the sap running there. That's why we did this down here. It all has to do with root pressure and that sap coming up. Kind of like you heard the saying, water takes the path of least resistance. Same thing here. You got the roots pushing water to the top. Well, this is your path of least resistance here, and the cut I made over here. See, it's not even doing it on this one that much. It's the first cut it hits. It's kind of like getting maple syrup. Join us this winter. We're going to make some maple syrup. It's the same principle. You're drilling a hole in your tree, and the sap's got a place to escape. That's how you collect sap for maple syrup. Same thing here. First cut it comes to, that's where it's draining off. This is going to take.